The sky of planet Xanthara was not blue, but deep red. With black clouds swirling like angry smoke, the ground was dry, cracked like broken glass, and sharp rocks covered every path. No trees, no rivers, just silence, and the sound of wind howling. Like a scream, at the center of this dead world stood a single object, a stone platform, ancient and glowing faintly with strange alien symbols. And in the center of that stone was a sword, stuck deep, unmoving for over 3,000 years. They called it the Trial Blade. Many believed it was placed there by the gods. Others thought it was a weapon of an old war, cursed by time itself. But one thing was certain, no one could lift it. Kings, warriors, warlords. Alien champions from across the galaxy had tried. They brought machines, power armor, even magic tech, but every attempt failed. Some died trying. Others went mad. The sword chose no one. It became a symbol, a legend, a test of true worth. Only the worthy one would lift it, the prophets said. And whoever did would awaken the power of the planet, but for 1,000 years. The sword waited silently, untouched, cold, and still. Then one day, a human came. His name was Eli Walker, a quiet soldier, not famous, not powerful. He wasn't a general, or a king, or a chosen one. He was just part of a small diplomatic escort from Earth. The United Terran Alliance had sent him with a peace. Group 2 Xanthara, but Eli never liked politics. He wandered off while others talked and argued inside the alien temples. Alone, Eli walked through the harsh landscape, his boots crunching on black gravel. He didn't know the stories of the sword. He didn't know the place was forbidden. He was just exploring, looking for quiet. But then, he saw it, the sword, shining faintly in the red light, standing alone in the stone. He stopped, staring at it, something strange pulling at his chest. He didn't understand why, but he walked closer, from behind the cliff's hidden alien eyes. Watched him. Guards whispered in panic, "Stop him." One hissed, "He must not touch the sacred blade." Too late, Eli was already standing in front of the stone. The air felt heavy, like a storm about to break. His hand reached out slowly, unsure, curious. He didn't believe in magic. But something inside the sword called him. He touched the hilt. A soft vibration ran through his fingers. It wasn't hot or cold, just alive. He blinked, confused, then heard whispers not from outside, but inside his mind, echoes of voices long gone, speaking in a language he didn't understand. And then the sword glowed. Bright blue light erupted from the ancient symbols. The stone beneath his feet hummed with energy. From far away, the alien guards shouted and ran toward him. Eli backed away, shocked. But the light followed him, wrapping around his hand like mist. The sword was reacting to him. The alien high priest arrived, face twisted in fear and anger. "What have you done, human?" he shouted. "You awakened it." "I didn't do anything," Eli said, raising his hands, but even he didn't believe his own words. The sword had responded only to him. He hadn't pulled it yet, but it had chosen him, and everyone watching knew it. An old alien elder stepped forward from the crowd. His skin was cracked like stone, his eyes glowing softly. For centuries, he had been silent. But now he spoke. "The sword has slept for 3,000 years, he said slowly, "and now it dreams again because of you." The wind stopped, the clouds above seemed to pause. Everything was watching Eli. The ground, the sky, the sword, the people. Something ancient had been triggered. And there was no turning back. Eli felt a deep chill in his bones. He didn't want to be a hero. He didn't even know what was happening. But the sword had reacted to his touch hand. Now the entire galaxy would know. Because no alien could lift the ancient sword. But the human had just made it glow. Asterisk, the sword's glow faded slowly. Leaving behind a strange silence, Eli Walker stood. Frozen hand trembling as he stepped back from the stone. The glow still echoed in his skin like electricity. Around him, the alien crowd began to murmur, some in fear, others in confusion, and some in laughter. He didn't even lift it. One alien snorted, his sharp teeth showing. It's a trick, a human illusion. Another growled. Dozens of species surrounded the platform, their armor clinking, their eyes glowing. From feathered Zarin warriors to the bulky Graxons with 3 eyes. They all stared at Eli, but not with respect, only with amusement. The alien high priest raised his staff, striking the ground with force. "This is no accident," he shouted. "This human has broken sacred law. Remove him at once." Guards stepped forward, but the elder, silent and ancient, raised his hand again. "Wait," he said in a calm, shaky voice. "The sword has not glowed in millennia. Something has changed. Changed." The priest snapped. "He is just a man, a Terran grunt. He didn't even pull the blade." But it reacted. The elder said, "That is enough." The crowd started to shift, some curious now, some angry. Eli stepped down from the platform. Hands raised. "I didn't mean to cause anything. I didn't even know what this was." The Graxon warriors laughed loudly, their deep voices echoing through the stone temple. "Look at him, skinny little Terran. Can't even lift a meal pack. He touched it by accident." One chuckled. "Next, he'll say he's the chosen one." Eli's cheeks flushed red. Not from embarrassment, but from confusion. He didn't feel chosen. He didn't feel powerful. He felt like he had just made a huge mistake. But the elder stepped forward. Closer than before, his eyes were cloudy, but focused only on Eli. "What did you feel when you touched the blade?" he asked gently. Eli hesitated. "Voices," he whispered. "I think they were voices, and heat in my chest, not burning, but like a heartbeat." Then the light started, and the wind stopped. "I don't know how," the elder nodded. Slowly, as if he had been waiting to hear those exact words. "The blade tests all who touch it," he said, "but none ever made it respond." "You are the first in thousands of years," the high priest growled. "He's not worthy. He is a man of war, not wisdom. He has no name in the great houses. He's not even invited here, just a security escort." Eli stepped back again, wanting to disappear. He wasn't special. He didn't belong in this argument between aliens. But then a small alien child stepped forward from the crowd. Eyes wide and full of wonder, she pointed at Eli and said in her soft voice, "The sword liked him." Silence followed, deep and uncomfortable. Even the Graxons stopped laughing. Everyone turned to the child and then back to Eli. The human who touched the untouchable, then let him try. The elder said, loud and final. "If it is a mistake, the sword will remain still. If he is worthy, then the legends will begin again." A circle formed, guards surrounding the area, priests chanting. The crowd became quiet. Holding their breath, the sword stood still in its stone bed. As it had for centuries, Eli felt pressure in his chest. A kind of fear he didn't know how to explain. He had fought in battles, faced death. But this was different. This wasn't about survival. This was about proving something. To an entire planet, he didn't even know what that something was. He stepped toward the sword again, slowly this time. His boots felt heavier with every step. He could hear the heartbeat in his ears, and maybe, in the ground itself, one of the alien warriors whispered, "Let's see what your soft human hands can do." Eli reached out, and once again, the hilt glowed blue. A warm light spread from the sword into the stone, into his hand, into the ground. This time, it was stronger, deeper. The air shimmered around him like heat waves in the desert. The alien crowd gasped again, but none dared interrupt. He placed both hands on the hilt now and closed his eyes. He whispered, "I don't know what you are or what you want from me, but I'm not afraid." The light exploded outward, a pulse of energy pushing the closest guards back. Symbols on the platform lit up one by one, like a countdown, but the sword stayed in place. Eli pulled gently, but it did not move. He pulled harder, still stuck. He gritted his teeth, trying again, sweat forming on his brow. But the sword didn't come loose. Some aliens began to snicker again. "He's just like the rest. No one can lift it. It was just a spark." Not a sign, but the elder did not laugh. He stared at Eli's hands, where faint trails of light were crawling into his veins. "It has accepted him," he whispered, "but not yet. It is not about strength." Eli stepped back. Breathing hard, he looked up at the crowd, confused, frustrated. "I didn't move it." He said, "I failed." "No," said the elder softly, "you began." And high above, hidden in the dark sky of Zenthara, something ancient began to stir for the first time in ages. The sky over Zenthara darkened further, even though it was not night. Thick clouds moved without wind, swirling in strange patterns above the sacred sword. Eli stood there, hands still tingling, his chest tight, his breath shallow, around him. Aliens whispered, some scared, some curious, but most still doubtful. The elders said the sword had accepted him, but it had not moved. It had only glowed, only hummed, only pulsed through his veins like lightning under skin. Was that enough? Eli didn't know. He wanted to walk away, to leave this place and return to his ship. But when he turned his back on the sword, called to him again. Not with sound, but with feeling, like a deep pull from inside his own soul. His legs moved. Without thinking, his hands reached out again. The hilt was warm now, almost like skin. As his fingers touched it a second time, everything changed. The world disappeared. He blinked, and suddenly he was not standing on Zenthara anymore. He was in a burning forest, trees collapsing, flames roaring. Smoke choking the air, he coughed, stepping back, but there was nowhere to go. He knew this place. This was Earth, the battlefield from 3 years ago, the Battle of Graven's Pass, where he lost 5 friends, where he failed to save his commander, where he blamed himself for everything. No, he whispered. This isn't real. But the heat was real. The fire was real. The screams were real. He heard a voice behind him, familiar, broken. Why didn't you save us, Eli? He turned and saw Private Jenna, her face covered in ash, her eyes empty. She had died in his arms. Now she stood, accusing, bleeding from the chest. You said you'd get us out. She said, you promised. Eli fell to his knees, eyes wet. I tried, he whispered. I swear I tried. Then everything turned black. Now he stood in a small hospital room. Cold lights above, quiet machines beeping slowly. He recognized the roomette was where his mother died. Cancer, slow, and cruel. He had been too late to see her one last time. She lay in the bed, eyes closed, unmoving. He stepped forward, trying to reach her, but the door locked behind him. She waited for you, said a nurse, her voice like ice. You were too busy, Eli. Pressed his forehead against the glass, crying softly. I was on duty. He whispered. She told me to go, but guilt hit him again, sharper than any blade. He fell once more. Now darkness swallowed him completely. No sound, no light. Just silence. He floated in nothingness. Time stopped, breath gone. Then a voice echoed deep within the void. Are you worthy? It wasn't loud, but it shook him to the core. I don't know, he whispered. I'm not strong, I'm not wise, I've failed so many times. The voice replied, and still you came. Suddenly, all the pain, all the guilt, all the memory surrounded him like waves, but he didn't run. He stood tall, shaking. Broken but standing. I won't hide, he said. If this is a test, then test me. But I won't pretend to be something I'm not. I'm just a man who tried. Even when it hurt, silence returned again. Then slowly, the world shifted. Eli opened his eyes and found himself back on Xanthara. His hands were still on the sword. The sky above him now crackled with blue lightning. The crowd around him had stepped far back, fear in their eyes. The platform beneath him was glowing, the runes now fully lit, but Eli didn't notice them. His mind was still echoing with the images of pain and failure, and yet he felt strangely light, as if something heavy had been lifted from his shoulders. The elder stepped forward again, his voice quiet but firm. You have faced your trials, he said. The sword does not care for muscle, or blood, or rank. It searches for what lives inside. The high priest, still furious, pointed his staff at Eli. This is dangerous. You saw what happened. He could destroy the balance. But no one listened to him now. All eyes were on Eli and the sword that still pulsed gently in his hands. A small alien child whispered. He didn't fall, another added. He came back stronger. The sword had tested him, not with battle, not with war, but with memory, with shame, with pain, and he did not let go. The ancient symbols began shifting again, forming new shapes around the platform. The temple ground trembled faintly. The test was not over, but the first gate had been passed. Eli looked at the sword and whispered, If I'm not the one, then send someone better. But if I am, I'll try not to fail again. And the sword glowed brighter than ever before. The wind had stopped blowing. The air on Xanthara stood still as if holding its breath. The sacred stone beneath Eli Walker's boots was glowing so bright now that it lit the faces of every alien watching. Blue lines of energy crawled across the platform like veins of light awakening after centuries of sleep. But the sword still sat in its place, unmoved, and yet something had changed, something no alien could deny. Eli had touched the sword. It had tested him. It had filled his mind with guilt, regret, loss, and he had survived. He hadn't screamed. He hadn't let go. He had returned from the trial, still standing, eyes full of pain, but heart steady, and no alien, not one, had ever done that before. The crowd was silent. Zarian bird warriors, tall and elegant, looked at each other nervously. Graxan brutes who once laughed now shifted uncomfortably. Even the elite Lyrakan psychic twins who once tried to trick the sword using mental illusions now stared at Eli like he was something unknown. They had all failed, and they knew it. The high priest's voice cracked through the silence. This means nothing. He barked. The sword did not move. The trial is not complete. But his voice no longer carried weight. Even his own guards stepped back slowly. Unsure, the elder walked toward Eli, leaning heavily on his staff. His steps were slow, but his voice was firm. I have lived through 400 harvests, he said. And I have watched thousands take the test. Some were warriors, some were kings, some were monsters. All of them failed, many without ever touching the sword. He turned to the crowd, raising one hand. Do you remember the Garlock champion who shattered his own arm trying to lift it? Or the Sorvan queen who bled from her eyes and lost her voice forever after a vision of her sins? The crowd murmured, heads nodding slowly. The elder pointed at Eli. He touched it twice, he said, and it accepted him both times. He endured the weight of memory and did not fall. No alien has ever done that. Not once. A hush fell again. Eli lowered his head, unsure of what he had become in their eyes. He didn't feel like a hero. He still felt like the same tired soldier who had lost too much. But now hundreds were staring at him like he was some ancient answer to a forgotten question. The alien council members finally arrived. Floating down on hover platforms, tall, robed, Beings with skin like crystal and eyes like silver orbs, they had not attended the early part of the event, believing the sword was just another tourist tale. But now, they looked uneasy. One of them, a counselor of the Xanthari species, spoke. Through a vocal translator, "This is not possible," it said, "a human. Earth has no legends of the blade, no temples, no prophecy." The elder nodded, and yet, "The sword knows him. It does not care for our bloodlines or titles. It cares for what survives in the storm." The Graxan warrior, the one who had laughed before, now stepped forward slowly. He looked at Eli, then at the sword. "I tried it once," he admitted. "I barely touched it, and my heart stopped for 9 seconds. They revived me, and I swore never to speak of it." A young alien girl from the Shira species, small and glowing, whispered from behind her mother. "The sword hurt my brother when he tried. He screamed for hours, then forgot who he was." The stories kept coming. Quiet voices now. Confessing the truth, the sword hadn't just rejected them, but the human. He was still here. Eli looked at them all, unsure what to say. He never asked for this, never wanted to be a symbol. But now his name was spreading through whispers. The human who didn't break, the outsider who touched the god's test and lived. The elder returned to him once more. "You do not need to lift it now," he said gently. "The sword is watching, and it will decide when you are ready. But what if I never am?" Eli asked quietly, "What if I only survived because I've already lost everything?" The elder smiled for the first time. "Then maybe that is why it chose you," he said. "Because strength does not come from victory, it comes from pain above." Then the storm clouds began to swirl again, but this time they formed a shape, a massive circle. Like an eye opening in the sky, light poured down on the platform, brighter than before. The sword glowed once more, but now it trembled. Just slightly, like it wanted to move. Gasps filled the air. And the high priest fell to his knees. "Impossible," he whispered. "It hasn't moved in 3,000 years, and yet it had. Not by force, not by rage, but by the quiet, broken heart of a man who still stood tall, and every alien there knew the truth now. No blade had ever judged them so clearly. No test had ever exposed them so deeply. But the human he endured, and the sword was awakening. The sky above Xanthara was no longer still. Clouds twisted like serpents in the air, forming spirals of light and shadow, from the temple towers to the distant cliffs. Every creature on the planet looked up. They all felt it. Something was about to happen, something that hadn't happened in thousands of years. Eli stood quietly on the glowing platform. The sword trembled slightly in the stone, just enough to make the runes around it flicker. He stared at it, chest tight, unsure if what he felt was fear or destiny. Around him, the alien crowd had grown. Hundreds now standing at the edges of the temple's circle. No one spoke, no one laughed anymore. Even the high priest had gone silent. Eyes wide, mouth slightly open, as if he had seen a ghost. The elder stepped beside Eli once more. "It is waiting," he said softly. "Not to be pulled, but to be welcomed. You do not force it. You open yourself to it." Eli nodded slowly, his mind still heavy from the visions the sword had shown him. He took a deep breath and stepped forward again. The platform reacted instantly, glowing brighter, the lines of light moving like rivers under his feet. When he reached the sword this time, the wind rose all around him, but not in chaos. Felt more like a voice, whispering without words. He placed his hands on the hilt again, gently, and for the first time. The sword moved, not much, just a soft shift, like it loosened itself for him. But the shock it sent through the crowd was like thunder. Several aliens dropped to their knees. Others gasped. Some even backed away in fear. One of the counselors spoke in a cracked voice. "It's true. It's really him." Eli didn't hear them. He closed his eyes. Focusing on the warmth running up his arms, it felt like light, like fire and water combined. Moving through every part of him, but it didn't hurt, it healed, it understood him. And it accepted him. He tightened his grip slowly. The glowing symbols along the platform started spinning. The ancient language unlocking itself one line at a time. Above, the storm clouds began to spin faster. Suddenly, the sword lifted. It rose from the stone like it had never been stuck at all. No cracking, no resistance, no sound of breaking rock, just smooth, graceful movement. Eli raised it above his head, and a beam of pure light shot into the sky. It split the clouds, reaching beyond the atmosphere for the first time since the ancient wars. The blade of Zenthara had chosen a wielder. The ground beneath the platform shook. Not violently, but powerfully. A pulse of energy expanded across the planet like a wave. From deep underground, structures began to hum. Temples lit up, forgotten. Towers opened, buried machines activated for the first time in ages. Far away, deep beneath the crust of Zenthara, something massive opened its eyes. The sword had not just been a weapon, it was a key. Eli's arms trembled, not from weakness, but from the power flowing through him. The sword in his hands was not heavy, yet was alive. It spoke to him without words, showing him visions, a galaxy long before now. A great war that shattered worlds, a protector built from stone and starfire. Sealed beneath the planet in slumber, and now, awakened, the crowd around him fell into silence again. Even the skeptical ones now bowed their heads, 'cause what stood before them was not just a human, it was the chosen bearer. The only being in history to pass the trial and lift the blade. The high priest collapsed to his knees, unable to speak. The counselors whispered ancient prayers long forgotten, and the elder simply smiled through tears. "I live to see it," he said. "The blade lives again." Eli slowly lowered the sword. Its glow dimming slightly, but still alive. He looked at the crowd, unsure of what came next. He had no speech, no heroic words. He was just a man who wanted peace, but now the galaxy would expect much more. From the ground beneath the platform, a deep rumble shook the temple. Cracks formed around the edges. Not from destruction, but from release. Something enormous was waking below them. A great machine, ancient and divine, created to serve the one who lifted the sword. The elder turned to the council, his voice steady. "The guardian has been summoned. It will rise, and it will test him again." Eli looked down, the stone under his boots glowing red now. He could feel the vibration under his skin. Not fear but challenge. He held the sword tightly, heart beating steady. He wasn't ready, not really, but he had already come too far to back down, and as the platform cracked open beneath him, revealing a spiral path of glowing steps into the earth, Eli Walker, the human nobody expected, began his descent. To face whatever waited below, not because he believed he could win, but because he had been chosen, and he could no longer walk away. The ground beneath Eli's feet trembled like a living heartbeat. The glowing spiral path opened before him, carved into the ancient stone of Zenthara. Each step pulsed with soft red light. As if the planet itself was guiding him downward, he took a deep breath and looked behind him one last time. Hundreds of alien eyes stared back, some in fear, some in awe, but no one moved, no one followed. Because the path below was not meant for them. It was meant for the one who lifted the sword, and that was Eli, the human, the outsider, the unexpected. With the blade in hand, he stepped onto the first stair. Instantly, the temple above began to shift. Stone pillars pulled back, sealing the entrance with ancient symbols. The crowd gasped as a dome of energy closed behind him. He was alone now. The air grew colder with every step. The lights around him changed from red to blue, then to a deep silver. Walls carved with alien writings lit up as he passed, showing pictures of past champions, images of those who had failed. Some crumbling in pain, others dissolving into ash. Then, one empty panel left blank for whoever passed the final trial. Eli swallowed hard, his grip tightening on the sword's hilt. His mind flashed with memories his old squad, his mother's final words, his failures. But now he wasn't running. From them, he was carrying them like armor. At the bottom of the spiral path stood a massive door, 10 meters high, shaped like a closed eye. As he approached, the sword in his hand began to glow again. The eye opened slowly, stone grinding against stone. And a voice echoed through the chamber. Bearer of the blade, it said, deep and metallic. You have passed the trial of memory. Now face the trial of purpose. Only one may stand before the guardian. Eli stepped through the door and into a giant underground arena. The ceiling was lost in shadows, and the floor stretched wide like a battlefield. At the center stood something. Massive, a mechanical giant. Twice the size of any being he'd seen before. It looked like a knight made of stars and steel, arms folded across its chest, its armor cracked but still glowing. This was the Guardian, a relic of the old world, left to test the Chosen One before the blade's true power could be unlocked. It opened its eyes, twin orbs of pure white light. Then it spoke. Why do you seek the sword's power, human? Eli stood tall, but he didn't pretend to be brave. I didn't come for power, he said. I didn't even know what this place was, but I touched the blade because I couldn't walk away. Something in me said this mattered. The Guardian tilted its head, its voice rumbling like thunder. Power without purpose destroys. Purpose without strength dies. To wield the blade, you must have both. Prove it. With a roar, the Guardian raised its massive arm, and the ground split as it slammed down a metal fist. Eli jumped aside just in time, landing hard but steady. The blade in his hand flared with light, shielding him from the shockwave. But the Guardian wasn't done. It moved faster than something that big should move, each step shaking the chamber, each strike sending sparks across the arena. Eli dodged again, barely staying ahead. He wasn't stronger, he wasn't faster, but he was smarter. He watched, studied, adapted. He saw the Guardian's movements weren't just random attacks. They followed a pattern, almost like a dance. A test, not of might, but of awareness, balance, and patience. The sword in his hands grew lighter the more he focused. It began moving with him, reacting to his thoughts. Together, they moved like one. He slid under the Guardian's leg, climbed a piece of broken structure, and leaped toward its chest with one clean motion. He slashed a glowing line across its armor. The Guardian roared, not in pain, but in recognition. Then it stopped moving. The light in its eyes faded, replaced with calm. Its voice came again, softer this time. You did not fight to win. It said, you fought to understand. That is why the blade chose you. The massive figure knelt before him, placing one hand on the ground from its chest. A small core floated upward, a piece of pure energy, humming with ancient power. It hovered in front of Eli, waiting. He reached out and touched it. The moment he did, a surge of warmth filled his body. Visions of the past of kings, warriors, monsters all appeared in his mind. But now, they were bowing not to his strength, but to his heart. The sword pulsed once more, now glowing with golden light. Its full power awakened, unlocked only by the one who passed both trials. The ground beneath Eli rose, forming a platform that lifted him back toward the surface. Far above, the clouds had opened again. The people waited, watching, hoping, and then a beam of golden light shot up from the earth, and Eli Walker rose into view, sword shining brighter than the stars. The crowd dropped to their knees, because now they knew he was not just the bearer of the blade. He was the first true champion of Xanthara. As Eli Walker rose from the earth on the glowing stone platform, the sky above Xanthara turned golden. Clouds parted in perfect circles, revealing a brilliant sun that had not shone so clearly in centuries. Light bathed the ancient temple, and the endless crowd of aliens watching with breath held tight. The sword in Eli's hand burned with golden fire, not of destruction, but of truth. It had chosen him not for power, but for heart, not because he was the strongest, but because he endured, and because he chose not to run when it mattered most. The high priest collapsed to the ground, head bowed low. I doubted him. He whispered, I called him unworthy. The counselors stood in silence, their silvery eyes reflecting the human standing above them all. One counselor finally broke the stillness. We must rewrite the scrolls, he said. We were wrong. The ancient elder stood with quiet pride, tears in his glowing eyes. For all these centuries, he said, we waited for someone to match the blade, and all along, it was not strength or bloodlines the sword needed. It was someone who felt pain and still stood. The platform gently touched the surface, and Eli stepped off. Every alien in the crowd lowered their heads as he passed, not out of fear, not out of command, but out of respect. He walked slowly, unsure of what to do, unsure of what came next. He was still Eli, still the tired soldier who once felt forgotten. But now, the galaxy watched him. The sword in his hand pulsed one last time. Then its glow faded softly, not because it had lost power, but because its duty was complete. Eli knelt down and placed the sword gently back on the sacred stone. It slid in smoothly, resting without force, and, as he stood up, the stone accepted the blade again, but now in peace. The runes around the platform dimmed, and the storm clouds above vanished. The trial was over. A young alien child walked through the crowd, her small feet tapping on the stone floor. She stepped in front of Eli, looking up with wide eyes full of wonder. Does this mean you're a king now? She asked quietly. Eli smiled softly, shaking his head. No, he said. It means I did the right thing, even when I was scared. The elder stepped beside him. The galaxy will remember that. They will remember the human who lifted what no one else could, but more than that, they will remember why he was chosen. From that day forward, stories of Eli spread across the stars. Not just on Xanthara, but on every planet where people felt weak, forgotten, or lost. He became a symbol not of power, but of quiet strength, of pain turned into purpose, of a man who was never meant to be a legend, but became one anyway. The council officially named the sword the Heartblade, and the site became sacred again, but this time, not just for warriors. It became a place of learning, of healing, of unity between species. For the first time in centuries, the aliens of the galaxy looked toward Earth not with pity or doubt, but with respect. Eli didn't return home right away. He chose to stay for a time, to walk among the people who once mocked him, not to boast, but to remind them of one simple truth: worthiness isn't about what you are born with. It's about the choice you make when the world wants you to quit. He visited schools. He helped rebuild old parts of the temple. And when he finally did return to Earth, he carried no crown, no trophy, just a calm heart and quiet eyes that had seen too much and chosen to keep going anyway. And the sword. It still rests on the stone, but it no longer glows, no longer pulses, because it no longer searches. It has already found its champion. And that story will be told long after stars fade from the sky. So if you ever hear the wind whisper through the canyons of Xanthara, if you ever feel a hum in your bones near that sacred place, it's not fear, it's not warning, it's remembrance of the day the sword finally moved, of the day a man with no title, no throne, no prophecy, lifted a legend and left behind a legacy greater than power itself. The galaxy feared the blade, but the blade chose a human, and in doing so saved them all.